All right, so good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started so that we can continue being on time like we did in the morning. The second session is going to be on education, which is very near and dear to my heart. As a biomedical engineer, I teach these wonderful students of ours, and as much as I also instill some research in them. So we're going to see how CIMBID can actually drive education, the education component, at the same time as research and translation. So the first speaker is going to be over Zoom, and is Garud Iyengar, who is the director of Data Science Institute. Is the Zoom ready? Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you see my slides? Yes. Yeah. There's an echo somewhere.
Yes, Garud, hi, it's Elisa. Yes, we're ready.
Hi, Lisa. Yeah. We can go?
Yes, way to go. Yeah.
Okay, great. I just was hearing an echo, so I didn't know what was going on. All right. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm glad that I'm at least able to participate on Zoom. Despina has been here for maybe 2 years, or at least it feels like an eternity. She's such a force of nature that when she came to Columbia campus, she came to visit the School of Engineering. We met. She has been driving such close collaborations between the medical school and the Morningside campus that it feels like she's been here forever. So thank you, Despina, for all you've done for the university already. I see the DSI as a bridge between the various departments and schools at Columbia, both at the Medical Center, the Morningside, Lamont, and Nevis, which is the fourth campus, not just geographically, but intellectually. And the DSI has played this role since its very inception. George Ripsack, who is going to be speaking later in this session, has been actively engaged with the DSI since its very beginning. And he's a very helpful advisor to me on the executive committee of the Data Science Institute even now. Despina has quickly become a very valued member of DSI, and I am personally very excited with the formal launch of CIMBID that we would start working on more opportunities of collaborating together. Just to give you a little bit of a background of the Data Science Institute and what we do, some of you might know this already, others may not be aware of it. So I'll just quickly go through the introduction for DSI and how we could potentially work with CIMBID. The Data Science Institute has a three-part mission: advance the state of the art of the foundations of data science and AI, transform all fields, professions, and sectors through the application of data science and AI by building bridges across Columbia University. Healthcare and imaging in particular is where we see huge potential for partnership. Later on in this presentation, I'll talk about some of the collaborations that the DSI has seeded in this area. And the third important part of the mission is to ensure the responsible use of data to benefit society by partnering with industry, government, not-for-profit to promote responsible and ethical use of data. Our tagline has been data for good, and increasingly we are looking at both ML and AI for good, and it reflects whatever we do to our very core. The Data Science Institute has members from over 400 plus affiliated faculty that come from all 17 schools of Columbia University. I'll talk a little bit more about how they're organized in centers in the next slide. In terms of education, we provide a PhD specialization in data science, and this might be of interest to the Viber program that Hashim is going to talk about after me in this presentation. And I may have mentioned this to Hashim in my meeting with him earlier last week, but if not, it's something that we're happy to collaborate on and see what we could do. We have a master's program in data science. The students are computationally very strong and eager to work on healthcare-related challenges. Many of you already work with some of these through various programs that I'll come to later on in this presentation. In terms of research centers, the work at Columbia on the research front is organized in 10 different centers and for 5 different focus areas. Among these areas, the place where I see faculty from CIMC very actively involved are in the Foundation Center, which is focused on developing new methodologies in machine learning, data science, AI. The Health Analytics Center, which is exploring ways of applying these techniques to various aspects of the healthcare ecosystem. And increasingly in the Cybersecurity Center that has broadened its purview to include privacy and federated learning. And how to do learning while keeping the personal information of many of the participants as private as possible. And in the healthcare setting, this is extremely important. Another area that the Data Science Institute has been asked to take leadership is that it's the hub for the Columbia AI Initiative. This is an initiative that is co-led by myself, by the Dean of Engineering, Shifu Chang, and by the Executive Vice Provost for Research, Jeanette Wing. And the Data Science Institute has been providing sort of the organizational muscle behind it. We've put up a website called ai.columbia.edu. I encourage all of you to go to this website. We're trying to reflect the work across all campuses, and CIMC is essential to that vision, especially as we see growing interest in medical AI, where cross-disciplinary collaboration can be truly transformational. One of the things about Columbia is that we have 17 different schools with deep domain expertise. And what this initiative is trying to do is bring that deep expertise together to have very strong impact. We want ai.columbia.edu to be a space with shared visibility. I strongly encourage you to go look at the website, see if you think there are things that are missing, talk to your departments, department chairs, events people, and we'll be happy to put your effort up there. The other initiative that the Data Science Institute has been leading in this space is a cross-school AI working group. From the medical school campus, we have Noemi El-Haddad, who spoke earlier today, and Ying Wei from the Mailman School represent their medical campus on this working group. And this working group has been thinking about various ways that we can make these collaborations be even better. The first big event that we put together with the help of this working group was the inaugural Columbia AI Summit. If you go to the ai.columbia.edu website, you will see there were 7 different panels. 2 of them were focused on the medical school campus. Despina, Noemi, Ying Wei all played very important role in putting these panels together. And we hope to have more of this happening in the next academic year. Switching back to the Data Science Institute itself, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we offer faculty. So these are the 3 things that we are offering faculty right now. Our seed funds programs is one of our most direct way of doing that. We provide funds to faculty, one from a domain space and another from the data science ML space, to come together and propose new research, cutting edge research that's not quite ready for outside funding. It's so innovative that we need some seed funds from within the institute or within the university to help get it to the next stage of getting externally funded. This year, 2 out of the 4 funded projects included medical school faculty partnering with colleagues in different schools. And one of them was broadly in the vision space, and I'll come to that in a moment. Beyond the seed funds, we also provide postdocs. We have a very competitive postdoc program that attracts very, very strong candidates. And this year, we've been able to attract candidates fighting off competition from MIT, from Stanford, even one from Caltech as well. The way this program is set up is that each postdoc has 2 mentors, one from a machine learning AI space and another from a domain space. And we have traditionally attracted a lot of postdocs who want to work in the medicine space. Outside of this postdoc mentorship program, we also have a program having to do with placing postdocs in cancer tumor boards as a way to get them very close to cancer healthcare. And that's a program that's outside of this, but it's something that we've been connecting with the medical school very strongly. We also have a program where faculty could connect directly with our master's students through a capstone project. They can offer projects where the students work on them in groups of 4 and typically deliver a result in about a semester's time frame. This is, again, an opportunity for faculty to reach out to students and partnering with them in different ways. I'll come to a little bit more detail about this in the next slide as well. Before we get to talking about what we do with students, I wanted to give you a highlight of the kind of things that we've been supporting broadly in the medical imaging computer vision space. We have given a seed fund for a team of 2 people, one from ophthalmology and one from computer science, to create an expert AI team for eye diseases. We also have a program of data and cancer collaboratory. Yading Yuan, who is the Herbert and Florence Irving Professor of Associate Professor of Radiation Oncology, also has a position within the Data Science Institute as an associate research scientist, and he's looking at various modalities of looking at cancer. Here are 2 things that are connected, but again, in the vision space. We have recently given a seed fund to generative pre-training of electromyocardial signals. This is for muscle-related activity, but the techniques that the seed fund people are using in this space builds a lot on imaging. Carl Wondrich, who is a professor in computer science, is one of our leading experts on using computer vision techniques for various kinds of applications. And that's an interesting application where they're visualizing these signals as images and trying to understand whether vision transformer techniques could be used in that space. Another seed fund that's broadly in the vision space is a support that we've given to Ning Qian from neuroscience and Tian Zheng, who is in statistics. And what they're trying to do in this seed fund is try to look into actually the visual cortex processing and develop new transformer technology to use that vision, use the way the human processes vision in order to get better ML techniques. And it's sort of going backwards. Instead of applying ML to the visual cortex, they're looking at visual cortex to try to understand what happens in the ML space. And one of the nice features about this technique is that it combines low resolution imaging with very topical, high resolution imaging only in areas where there is some interest. And I hope that maybe some of the ideas that come out of this might be applicable more broadly in medical imaging. So that's for the research end. In terms of opportunities to connect with students, we have the DSI Scholars Program, where we pair students with Columbia faculty for hands-on semester-long data science projects. A CIMBID-specific version of this program is under development, and I will be sending more information about it to you all as soon as Despina and I end up getting all the details sorted out. Campus Connection connects skilled students with Columbia faculty seeking immediate support on ML and AI related activities. We also host 60 annual events to help students connect with the experts, and we're always looking for people to come and talk to these students about what's new and exciting in various aspects of data science and AI. And we would love to have people from CIMBID come and give talks to our students and participate through all of these programs. There is an immense enthusiasm among Columbia students for real-world health applications, and the students here are extremely talented. So I would encourage you to come and talk to them. Finally, we have a very strong MS in data science program, and we would be open to collaborating, of courses with CIMBID to bring CIMC content into our MS program. There's interest in integrating clinical imaging use cases into the curriculum, providing capstone projects, which is this semester-long project based on imaging data. And so there's a lot of things that we could be collaborating on here. I wanted to stop here and open the floor for any questions you might have. Thank you very much again for having me. I apologize that I could not be there in person.
Thank you, Garud. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, so one quick question I have. What do you think for your last slide? We have the MD/MS program, right, together with the medical school and the engineering school. So do you think this is something that we can also have CIMBID tap into?
Absolutely. I think there are different come in with different varieties, biomedical engineering, computer science, data science. These are all different aspects that can come together. So having a course where potentially all three of these disciplines end up taking that class, and maybe even having groups with all three expertise, data science, computer science, biomedical, that could be a fantastic way to bring engineering expertise, or let's say more broadly, engineering and ML expertise to CIMBID.
Yes, so we just have to, again, align everything together between all these programs and endeavors, and I think we can definitely do it through the center. So thank you again.
Welcome.
All right, so we're going to go along those lines to see what we can do with other synergies with CIMBID, which is going to be through the Viber program. And the next talk is going to be given by Hashim Al-Hashimi, who's the Associate Dean for Biomedical Graduate Education. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for the invitation. I want to echo what Gaurav said earlier about Despina. It really feels like I've known Despina for the entirety of my life. And she most certainly has impacted already this effort that I'm about to tell you called Viber. So Viber is a new initiative that aims to improve and enhance the experience that our graduate students have across the CIMC. Now, this is an effort that has been ongoing for a couple of years. I just want to point out that there are multiple members who are helping us in this effort. This is the leadership team. We have a group of phenomenal assistant deans as well as administrative support that is teaming together to really create this new experience for our students across all of the PhD programs at CIMC. Now, in addition to this, we have centralized the PhD programs at Columbia, and as a consequence, we now have an office that manages all the affairs that deal with our graduate students. In the past, as many of you probably know, the various PhD programs ran out of departments. So, for example, genetics had its own PhD program and its own staff that basically oversaw that program. Now we have centralized everything into the dean's office to create a landscape in which our students can more seamlessly have a more broader experience and also access to faculty from a wide variety of disciplines and basically ease this ability to have a transdisciplinary experience. Okay, so what are the goals of Viber? The goals are to attract exceptional students, to empower our students to discover and pursue their passions and career paths, to provide an inspiring and transformative education, and to cultivate a supportive community. And so, of course, many of these elements were already accomplished by the previous graduate program, but there's always room for innovation, for improving, and so I want to go over what our objectives are to achieving these goals and maybe achieving a higher level of innovation. So at first, we want to offer a customizable curriculum appealing to a diverse, talented applicant pool. So we're increasingly living in a world where scientific disciplines blend seamlessly together. And while there's been lots of effort at the graduate level to teach our students this integration, there's much more room to really deliver a curriculum that empowers our students to think broadly across scales, across disciplines. We want to give them the flexibility to explore these different tracks before committing to a particular track. So normally students generally apply, for example, to the neuroscience PhD program, and more or less we tell them, you are a neuroscientist, so just stay in the neuroscience program. But as often happens, students come to Columbia, they meet various faculty, they go to courses, and maybe they change their mind and decide, you know what, I actually want to become a geneticist. I don't want to become a neuroscientist. And we want to be able to allow students that freedom and flexibility to broadly explore their interests so that if in the end they in fact choose to become a geneticist rather than a neuroscientist, that that's not only an option, but that we encourage them to really pursue their passion and interests. We want to bring together students and faculty members into communities. So, if students can integrate seamlessly across disciplines, that indirectly causes our faculty colleagues to also integrate more seamlessly into communities that are interdisciplinary. We want to offer an innovative, forward-thinking model that is highly marketable. We want to be able to go and compete with our peers with this new, innovative, forward-looking model. We want to promote cross-disciplinary interactions and collaborations that break silos, cultivate a sense of belonging and purpose among students, faculty, and staff, enhance the process of admission through coordination. So you can imagine that oftentimes when students apply, they might be more well-suited for a different program. And while there is some communication across programs, having it all under one centralized system not only allows for more productive engagement with the applicant pool, but also to sort their applications more effectively to which program suits their interests most effectively. And we also want to help streamline the application of best practices across tracks. Many of our tracks, individual PhD tracks, have great traditions and aspects, and we now have the opportunity to basically cut and paste all the great things from the best practices from all the programs and make sure that they are applied uniformly while ensuring that each program continues to be independent intellectually so that they can, basically provide the training that's needed for success in the different disciplines. So as I said, this has been a long time project that started in May 2023 with then Dean Katrina Armstrong forming 2 task force groups that looked at our entire biomedical education enterprise. And after this launch groups, we had some recommendations put forward, and we're now in the process of implementing these recommendations. And so right now we are in the implementation phase. And as I mentioned, we have restructured things so that now the graduate programs are centralized. Any faculty member at CIMC can access students by participation in any one of these PhD programs. We have a centralized, as I said, staff that manages the graduate program. We have support for our students offered by a generous gift from Roy and Diana Vagelos, which really formed the foundation of Viber. And we have started to create various frameworks that provide a general experience that is common to all of our students across the different tracks. And recently we had to then rewrite our curriculum. Actually, this is a lot of work whenever you change your PhD program, you have to get state approval. And so we recently have now submitted the application of this new program to state for approval, and we anticipate hopefully getting approval. And then this year, we will market for the first time the new Viber program so that the following year, the students will be essentially engaging, and it will be the first cohort for this program. Okay, so meeting Despina actually early in this process has been quite instrumental in shaping the various disciplines that are represented in Viber. Unfortunately, we can't advertise the actual PhD tracks until we get state approval. But I can at least say that these particular disciplines that I'm showing here will be represented amongst the various tracks that we will be offering at Viber. And you can see there that many of these are common. Many of these tracks have been there before, so they're not new. But I'm highlighting some of the new ones in red. And in particular, I want to emphasize computational biology, as well as little AI next to biomedical informatics. And I want to say that, again, interactions with Despina were very critical in formulating this new forward direction path, because we know that we need to give our students stronger, deeper training in computer science and making sure that we allow them to bridge computer science to biomedical science in the most effective way, collaborating with various entities at Columbia. Okay, so this program, as I said, offers this the uniqueness of Viber is that it's interdisciplinary, cross-departmental. If it's the PhD in genetics, doesn't mean that it's running out of the Department of Genetics. It means that it's a bunch of faculty from across Columbia that are interested in genetics running a genetics program across all departments. And furthermore, it allows for this very unique experience that students arrive with a soft affiliation. For instance, they may be softly affiliated with neuroscience, but as they proceed through the program and at the end of their first year, they can finally choose to declare that they are a biomedical informatics student. So if they wanted to switch paths or tracks along the way, that is an option that is afforded to them. And it's really the question of how do you then implement a framework which allows students this enormous flexibility, but not lose the deep training that they need to have in order to specialize in specific disciplines. And one of the things that we've done to put on top of the structure of disciplines is to create basically 3 overarching groups of communities, which we call Bites to Biology and Health, Molecules to Life, Neuron to Behavior. These are 3 groups of student communities that drive their intellectual interest and creates an additional layer of communities beyond the level of individual tracks, so that we're always bringing together students under a common intellectual arc. And so in all of these 3 communities, our emphasis is going to be to go all the way from molecules to organisms. So we want, there's no more just, if you're, whatever physiological process you're studying, you need to go deep down to the molecular level and go all the way up at the organismal level. And we want to encourage and proactively engage our students on this multi-scale type of training across these different intellectual domains. And of course, computer science and experimental science and theoretical science all blended together. Okay, so now I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I just want to emphasize that in order to have this flexible framework of a curriculum, you actually need to do quite a bit of work to innovate the curriculum. And with our collaborator, with my team at Vibra, we've really, I think, come up with something very, I think, novel. And this is the curriculum that basically has foundational courses in the life sciences, but also computational foundations. So now we have actually never had really computer-based courses in the past. And now we have 2 foundational courses, which we're calling Bites to Biology 1 and Bites to Biology 2. By foundational, I mean required across all disciplines. Of course, biomedical informatics and systems biology have had their courses, but these are now computational courses that are really there to be provided as an option for anyone across all the disciplines in Viber. And of course, we have then this generalized framework that I'm not going to go over that allows all the different tracks in the first year to have a common framework. So even though you're different tracks, there's a common underlying framework with these foundational courses, building the foundation and allowing the students exposure to the various disciplines early on, and the seamless ability to switch courses and tracks if necessary as they progress along. And there's basically the program courses, there's some skill competencies, and then track-specific courses. So students will still receive the deep expertise that they need to have through track-specific courses. So this is Viber, and we're hoping to continue to collaborate, now with this launch with the broader community. And in particular, I want to thank again Despina for all her support and her input in this process. And I'll thank you and take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? This reminds me a lot of how we did it biomedical engineering, where you have all kinds of courses from chemical engineering, mechanical, electrical, computer science, and then you have all these medical aspects. And then in the beginning we had separate tracks, but now it's a mix and match, exactly what you're doing. So I think it gives a lot of freedom to the students. So do you think they will need an advisor at that level? How do you envision this happening, and will it have some prerequisites for each student to continue that path?
Yeah, so we have directors of graduate studies. So each track has a committee that's headed by directors of graduate studies. And these are essentially mentors that students check in with the minute they arrive to Columbia. And these mentors will be working with students to personalize their academic trajectory. And of course, they have rotations that they're going through. And that becomes more important now that we open now that there's some more freedom. The good news is students are free. On the other hand, we want to make sure they don't get lost in the many options that they have. So there will be like a soft affiliation with the track. So those students who are committed to a particular track, they want to do neuroscience, they'll be given a path to that that's easy. But for those who are more adventurous, there will be always guidance from the DGSs across the way so that they are able to do it. So yeah, it's an experiment, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, thank you again. All right, so it's truly amazing what you can do when you bring everybody together in this campus. And thank you, Despina, for coming all the way from Philadelphia to do this. We're very lucky to have you here. All right, so we continue with the third talk, which is going to go back to DSI, I think. It's going to be given by George Kripsuk.
All right, hi all. Thank you for having me. Congratulations to Despina and to all of us for the opening of the center. And I'm going to talk about something called, I'll do two things. I'm going to tell you what this thing called Odyssey is, and then I'm going to tell you where the articulation is with the new center, and in the middle I'll have a brief commercial break. You'll see that in a second. Observational research is what we're talking about. Subjects observed in the natural settings could come from insurance data, electronic health records, imaging data, as we've heard all morning, and other sources too. And the initiative I'm going to speak about most is Observational Health Data Sciences and Informatics, or Odyssey. Its mission is to improve health by empowering the community to collaboratively generate the evidence that promotes better health decisions and better care. International initiative with the coordinating center at Columbia, and founded through the Data Science Institute, which we heard about first, and that's the connection there. I met my collaborators who created the center 10 years ago through DSI. Our current group has grown. We have 4,000 researchers from 83 countries around the world. In the last 10 years, we've published about 700 papers as a group. Odyssey has a data model that I'll show you in a moment, and it's right at, as of actually last year, I have to redo it for the next year, 974 million unique patients have had their data, at least one of their records, converted to the Odyssey Common Data Model. So 12% of the world's population, including everyone in the world, has had their data converted to this model. How do you create a billion-person database? Well, you don't. What you do is you leave it federated. So everyone keeps the data locally. They convert it to this same data model. Then when I have a study I want to do, I send the query around the world. It's voluntary. Whoever wants to run it runs it. They send the answer back centrally, and then we collaboratively interpret it and publish together. And that's why our papers tend to have a lot of authors on them. Here's the data model. Here's the data schema. The important thing is it's relative. You can't see it too well. It's relatively simple. There's like a table for drugs, procedure, device, measurement is lab, person, et cetera. So it's very straightforward. That's important to get this thing used around the world. If we're going to use it around the world, we need a vocabulary. So our vocabulary has 11 million concepts, 86 million relationships, and they map everything from around the world to a common set, which is basically the US core data set is what we go to, and that has worked out well for us. The big challenge with retrospective studies, observational research, is that how do you know when you have a causal effect or an association? So does this drug really cause this thing, or is it just associated with it? Carrying a cigarette lighter, does it cause lung cancer, or is it just associated with smoking, which really causes lung cancer? So we've come up with a framework with 10 items for how to carry out more reliable research. And it's things like pre-specified protocols, open source software, diagnostics made public, blinding of results, and then diagnostics for every step of the process. And I'll just show you three examples of how we use this. The US Hypertension Guideline 2017 looked at 60 drugs. Half of them are first line. Not a lot of information about how to distinguish among them beyond that. It's supposedly an evidence-based guideline. If you look at the circle on the left, you see a bunch of dots around the perimeter. Those are the drugs they looked at. The arcs between the dots, that's where we have evidence, the randomized trials, 40 randomized trials. So when they say they did an evidence-based guideline, what they mean it's an expert opinion-based guideline with some evidence in it. Odyssey said, well, let's take the retrospective data using our new methods and see if we can fill that in. On the right, you see the circle that Odyssey created for hypertension drugs. And it's 500,000 hypotheses we tested among 10,000 drug comparisons. There's a lot of them because you do pairs of drugs in hypertension treatment often. So we said, well, is what we're doing reliable? Well, of those 40 randomized trials that existed, 30 of them were duplicated by our study. So how did we do? Well, we got 28 out of 30, we got the same answer. If we were perfect, then by the definition of a p-value, we'd expect to get it right 28 out of 30. So we're not actually distinguishable from being perfectly aligned with RCTs. We're probably not, but we're very close to doing well. It's not just about retrospective. What can we predict? So there's an area in diuretics treatment for hypertension that has a controversy. Everyone takes the drug on the left, hydrochlorothiazide. Researchers want us to switch to chlorthalidone. They had an indirect meta-analysis showing, and that's kind of a form of observational research, claiming that chlorthalidone is better. We did our study a few years ago, and it showed that hydrochlorothiazide equally effective, but more safe. I got lambasted in the literature, in the letters to the editor. 2 years later, the RCT came out from the VA, 13,000 subjects, and it duplicated our results, not the previous results before that. So there's a case where we bucked with the past and predicted the result that came out 2 years later. We couldn't have cheated. Sometimes you come up with results that everyone likes instead of that one. So in that one, ACE and ARB, we invented, these are also hypertension. We invented ARBs to fix ACE inhibitors. We knew it works. They're about equally effective, maybe slightly more, but they're safer in some ways. But we didn't have the randomized trial, and we're never going to do that trial. So we published our paper in Hypertension, picked up in JAMA News, and Circulation did the editorial that says, okay, this study, we're done. This is good enough. We don't need any more. We need to change the guideline and push the next 140 million people who take ACE inhibitors around the world to take ARBs. We don't need to change the people who are already working well on ACE inhibitors, but the next 140 million. And then lastly, COVID, we did a lot of work. Here's one example where in 2021, AstraZeneca vaccine had a clots coming out. EMA, it got turned off in Europe temporarily March 11th to 15th in 2021. EMA came to us. We ran a study in 2 days, gave it back to them. On March 18th, they turned AstraZeneca vaccine back on for 700 million people with the conclusion that it does cause a little bit of clotting, but it was 1 in a million, 1 in 100,000. It was worth taking the drug anyway. So that's Odyssey. Then we're going to bring it into imaging. But first, a word from our sponsors. Odyssey, for Noemi mentioned earlier, the DBMI is running a summer school in observational research that you're welcome to attend. It's July 14 to 18. It's an in-person using very large databases to learn how to do observational research, from designing the study to applying open source tools to executing the analyses on these large databases. So we still have spots open. You're welcome to that. Odyssey has an imaging work group. So we've been working to collaborate even before the formation of the center, and it's creating extensions to Odyssey. So first thing is you can use this structured clinical data to come up with cohorts that you then go with their images. So that's the first one on the list. More important, the second one is bringing features derived from the medical images into the OMOP common data model. And the last one is coming up with examples of using these two good resources together. So here's an example of, so on the bottom, you see that picture on the bottom is like just a small copy of what I showed you earlier. And off on the left, you see that appendage. That's what's being proposed, which is shown above it. There's an image occurrence table and an image feature table, and there are different things go into those two to make it so we can bring those things into the OMOP common data model. Here's the conference proceeding on it. This is being pushed forward by Hopkins and by Yonsei University in South Korea. Columbia has been kind of part of it at a distance, but not a big part. But a part of my point is that we could be a big part of this or lead. They're integrating the DICOM, but one part of this is the vocabulary. How do you bring all the DICOM? If you have a DICOM information, how do you get into the OMOP common data model? That's what this was about. And this publication is the journal publication for their work, basically, putting it all together in the Journal of Imaging, Informatics, and Medicine. But then other groups are working in parallel, so I won't go in details, but this is a graphical abstract of basically doing the same thing independent of the first group, as we know often happens. The Odyssey will be maybe a focal point where we can kind of pick one and do it well, but that's where we can weigh in. And last slide. So how should we integrate these two things? Well, a range of integration is possible. The All of Us Research Program pulls together, the All of Us Research Program uses the Odyssey Common Data Model as its clinical databasis, and then they have the genomic data. And they have it sit in a separate database, and then they integrate them at the Jupyter Notebook level. So you're basically looking at two databases. So that's the first one, and they're linked by the patient ID. So we can do that. A step better would be to have Odyssey import the image metadata and the post and the machine learning, deep learning processing, and put that in the model, and then have links out to the database. And we do that already for natural language processing data. We should do it for imaging data. And last, what we really want to get to is the integrated analytic interface. And so that's what we could be working on here. You know, whether you're doing retrospective analysis on EHRs or on an image database, you have the same issues of reliability, open source, efficiency, evaluation. So we can share ideas between the Odyssey Center and the our new imaging center. So we welcome, obviously, interested researchers. And I will stop there.
Thank you very much. That's so exciting to see how you sort through all this data, literally. Do we have any questions? So I have a couple of questions. One is how do you think imaging can actually, for example, in the drug study, in the hypertension, do you think there was something that you could use images for, or do you have other drugs in mind?
So the big one right now, so one of our most active work groups on the clinical side is the ophthalmology work group. And it's so based on images, and every time they go, they're going to use some diagnosis code for like optic neuropathy or something, and they really need the image.
Right.
And they'd like to have the image, or they'd like to have the output of a reliable machine learning program and put that in there. So they're part of the, I should have shown their slide, in fact, but part of their work is they're just trying to do everything. From all sides, they're trying to solve it, get the images in there, get the output of ML in it, get the output of what the doctor said about it in there, so they can do more reliable studies and have a better phenotype of who really has optic neuropathy. So I think, actually, that might be, and Jack Chaffee, chair of ophthalmology, would be open to this. That could be a route for this center through ophthalmology to Odyssey.
That sounds fascinating. And one more question along the lines of the previous talk. If you were to work with students that want to, do this work, what are you looking for from expertise and or for further training that you think is pivotal?
So we, the way we've done it in Odyssey is we go through each of us. We have many universities that are part of Odyssey, and so each of them mostly working with PhD, but also master's students coming in and doing a combination of informatics and epidemiology and statistics. Some going for, and computer science.
Okay.
And then, of course, on the clinical side, we have people coming in from that side. So like our biomedical informatics degree program, we pull people from kind of like the domain area and from the methods area and put them together. And that's what we aim for in our PhD programs. And we do it, Hopkins has a lot of PhD students, Stanford, Columbia, Harvard some, and so on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So the last but not least talk of the session will be given by Mark Sabonku. And it's going to be on probably closing the session with how we can help work with our sister university, Cornell, about even being even more synergistic with imaging and data.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here. Honestly, thank you, Despina, for the invite. I've known Despina for a long time, and I'm really excited that she came to New York, and she's at our sister institution, as you said. So I'm from Cornell, the other Ivy in New York. I'm not sure if that's a good thing anymore, but it is what it is. So I'm based actually at Cornell Tech, which is on Roosevelt Island. Some of you might know where that is. It's between Manhattan and Queens. But I also have a secondary appointment at the medical campus. So that's Weill Cornell Medicine on the other side of the river. And at the medical campus, I serve as the Vice Chair of AI and Engineering Research in the Department of Radiology. Okay, so my research program and sort of the research ecosystem that I've been trying to grow at Cornell, bridging the medical campus and Cornell Tech and also Cornell Ithaca, is what I like to call AI for Medical Imaging, or AIMI for short. And essentially, it's sort of all of AI-related technologies that address all the problems that you see in this one slide, all the way from acquisition, so how do we get better images faster, cheaper, to downstream utility of these images in individual level clinical decision making and assessing treatment outcomes and even population health studies. And so personally, I've worked on this in my own research, but we're sort of developing this research community at Cornell that I'm going to talk a little bit about that basically looks at all aspects of this, this spectrum. So this is Manhattan in New York, the map of New York. I just realized I probably cut out where we are today. I didn't realize how far up north this place was. But yeah, this is like 99% of Manhattan, I'd say. Cornell's footprint in the city is sort of in that little rectangle down there, which I've sort of blown up a little bit. So Roosevelt Island is there, where Cornell Tech's based, and then Weill Cornell Medicine is right across the river on the other side. And it's kind of an interesting sort of dynamic, because Weill Cornell Medicine has been in the city for over a century at this point. Obviously, New York Presbyterian is our affiliated hospital that we share with Columbia that has a campus there as well. But Cornell Tech is a very new campus. It's sort of been there about 7 years or 6 years at this point. It's like a 10-year-old idea since inception. And it's kind of like a startup campus, right? So both in spirit and in its intention, it's a startup campus. So in its intention, it was actually founded as a campus that will focus on societal impact. So taking our work into the real world, often through entrepreneurship activities. So we have a startup runway program, we have an incubation program. So we're really focused on entrepreneurship on our campus at Cornell Tech. And I'm sort of semi in charge of building the bridge between, we have a bridge called the Queensboro Bridge, but it actually doesn't have access to Roosevelt Island, unfortunately. So I'm trying to build some sort of a bridge between the two campuses. Okay, so in the context of AI for medical imaging, the Department of Radiology has really made significant investments in this space at Cornell. And we've so far hired 3 dedicated faculty. In fact, we're actually just having a new faculty join us. So there's going to be 4 faculty that are dedicated to this area, research area, that will have primary appointments in the Department of Radiology. All of these faculty members also have dual appointments at Cornell Tech. We have this sort of fellowship program every year that we will offer, which is a competitive program that's kind of an independent postdoc, basically, where we will essentially offer postdoctoral fellowships to people around the world. Last year we received about 350 applications. This person is, when they show up, they're free to do whatever. They basically are independent in choosing their research agenda, who they want to work with, who they want to choose as their mentor. We have a sort of group of advisors that they can consult. We've also built an on-prem AI cluster in Manhattan, which I'm not super happy about because I don't think it's the most wise decision to have a compute cluster in Manhattan, but in terms of the real estate and power needs. But it is what it is, and we sort of have made significant investments in this and are continuing to growing it. And another area that we're really focused on is taking the research that we are doing, the AI models that we're developing, and bring them into the clinic, into the clinical workflow. So we've developed this workflow in the context of radiology that essentially implements a lot of our AI models in the radiology workflows. Okay, so the people, these are the faculty members who have appointments in the Department of Radiology, but who have affiliations with Cornell Tech and engineering. A lot of these are new hires. In fact, Alexei hasn't even shown up yet. I just put him up there. They're all PhDs, non-MDs, but they're all very passionate about clinical applications and really want to be embedded in a medical school environment where they can work on their technologies that will be implemented in clinical workflows. We also have folks at Cornell Tech who a lot of them are very much AI and computer vision type researchers, mostly in computer science or engineering. And these are a handful of examples I'm showing up there, but who have definitely interest in developing technologies for healthcare applications. And one of the primary roles of our center or institute is going to be to bring together these communities, the engineering people with the medical people. Okay, so I'm going to use the last few minutes I have to just highlight a few research projects. And this is one that Amy shared with me. So Amy Kozieski is a professor in radiology, a longtime collaborator of mine, and her research interests involved looking at MRI-derived connectomic data, that's functional connectome and structural connectome of the brain, to sort of understand or to make predictions about clinical outcomes, for example, in the context of stroke, right? When a patient has a stroke and what happens after that, post-stroke, that kind of a question. She's also looked at problems like how lesions affect the connectivity of the brain and how that might be linked to other types of different types of clinical outcomes. This is another project I want to highlight by another professor, is an assistant professor, Qingyu Zhao, who's looking at adolescents and linking functional connectivity data to adolescent behavior, rule-breaking behaviors, things like attention deficit disorder, and really trying to understand those underlying mechanisms. Hee-Jong Kim is another junior faculty member in our department who is looking at prostate cancer and imaging in prostate cancer. One recent publication that we wrote together involves looking at images that are acquired. These are low-field MRI images that are acquired for guidance in radiation therapy of prostate cancer patients. One important question we had was, could we look at these images to understand if there was any prognostic utility of these images? And turns out there is, and you can refer to our paper about that. But it was kind of an interesting application of an algorithmic approach to some data set where you suspect there should be information in that data set, but it's really never used in a clinical setting because these images were only used to sort of guide the radiation therapy. Okay, so in the few minutes that I might have, I'm just going to quickly talk about my own sort of passion these days, which is this clinical context called autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease, or ADPKD. I was introduced to this clinical question by a very close collaborator and colleague of mine called Martin Prince, who's also got an affiliation at Columbia. He's a radiologist by training. He's a body radiologist. And this is a disease that is not super uncommon. It's not common, but it's sort of 1 in 2,000 individuals get it. And it's an heritable disorder. And it's basically in sort of mid to late life, you start getting these sort of benign cysts in your kidneys, usually starts in your kidneys, which proliferate and grow and start sort of occupying your abdomen, essentially, and crowding out the organs. And a lot of these patients unfortunately end up with kidney failure down the road and all sorts of other issues. And the one sort of thing that you want to do is keep track of the progression of the disease and understand how fast it's progressing. And so what these patients do is they get imaging typically on an annual, if they're lucky and have access to good healthcare, they would get annual MRI scans. And these MRI scans would be basically done to assess disease burden, quantify progression, and maybe evaluate treatments if they're getting treatments for this disease. So this is what maybe, let's see if this works. Okay, this is what if you fly through a T2-weighted MRI study of one of these patients, this is what you will see. You basically see a lot of sort of the cysts that you might have noticed in the abdomen. It's a very information-rich sort of image, right? So you have the entire sort of internal, all the organs are there. You see the cysts, different types of pathologies might be visible. Okay, so that image, and this is not uncommon in radiology, gets distilled into a report that will look like this. I've summarized that report. But the report is not a lot longer than this, right? You would basically have some statements about, the appearance of these organs, maybe if there's a cyst, maybe some rough estimate of the size of the cyst, and just some overall impressionistic statements like multiple hepatic cysts without complications, maybe no acute findings, X, Y, Z, right? But essentially, a radiology report is supposed to be a distillation of the rich information content of the pixels into some written report that is often a page long, okay? Another thing about this report is it rarely has numbers in it, right? I mean, this is an unusual scenario because we're looking at a polycystic kidney disease patient, and you're supposed to be measuring things in this type of patient, but most radiology reports don't really have numbers in it. And the other thing I want to point out is once the report is generated, 99% of the time, that's the only piece of information you're left with in downstream clinical decision making. Nobody goes back to the pixels. The pixels are gone. You just look at the report, okay? And so to me, that's kind of a shame. I'm really, as Despina pointed out, as many of you have talked about, we know, pixels have a lot of information, and we should really be able to capture that information, and we believe that algorithms and AI is going to be helpful in that pursuit. So one measurement that I want to quickly highlight is called total kidney volume, and it's known to be a biomarker of this disease. It's a very important number to quantify in these images and measure precisely, and the way it's done today is not as bad as Despina pointed out in the example of cancer, where you're looking at just one linear measurement, but it's not too far off either. You find basically 3 measurements that capture the width, depth, and length of a cyst, or sorry, in this case, kidney. And from those 3 measurements, you sort of approximate the total kidney volume using this formula. Multiply those 3 numbers times pi over 6. And that's your rough guesstimate of what the total kidney volume is in this patient, and you keep a track of that. Now, this is a very noisy measurement. It's not really very precise. In fact, in the best case scenario, you would get about 10% error in those types of measurements, which is by no means actually sufficient. In fact, if you look at a specific drug that's used in these patients called tolvaptan, the annual change in the rate of growth of a total kidney volume is usually around 5%, and you really want to be at that precision to be able to tell if this patient's responding to that treatment or not, which is not obviously going to be the case when we're measuring the kidney this way, and that's why you often wait 3 or 4 years before you can confidently tell if the patient is responding to treatment in these cases. So there are actually ways to use the total kidney volume and how it's changing over time in an annualized fashion to classify these patients. But as I said before, if you don't measure it precisely, your classification of these patients is going to be wrong as well. So what we did is we basically developed a segmentation model. And I'm not going to go over the details, but to me, segmentation is a solved problem at this stage. You create a segmentation tool to automatically segment the 3D objects, the kidney, but also everything else in the abdomen that you can see, and generate a quantitative report for each patient. And this is a model that we're deploying in the clinic today at Weill Cornell. And we get these structured reports that are tables and visualizations that correspond to the sizes of the different organs that you see in the abdomen of these patients. And this gives you a very precise way of classifying and keeping track of these patients as they progress and respond to treatment or not. With that, I'll just end. Thank you.